The sound of the slap echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. My cheek burned as if fire had licked across my skin, and for a split second I couldn't breathe. The Thanksgiving turkey sat untouched on the table, steam rising into a silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. 12 pairs of eyes stared at me, some wide with shock, others narrowed with cruel satisfaction, and a few that held something far worse, indifference. Maxwell stood over me, his chest heaving with rage, his hand still raised as though he wasn't quite finished. His voice dripped with venom when he snarled, "Don't you ever embarrass me in front of my family again." His mother smirked from her seat as if she had been waiting for this moment. His brother chuckled under his breath. His sister rolled her eyes as though the humiliation of a wife was nothing but a petty inconvenience. But then from the corner of the room came a voice that sliced through the tension like steel cutting glass. "Daddy." Every head turned toward my daughter Emma. She stood by the window clutching her tablet against her chest. Her dark eyes, so much like mine, were steady, unblinking, and filled with something that shifted the air in the room. It wasn't childish fear. It was something colder, sharper. Something that made Maxwell's confident sneer falter. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, her voice calm and eerily composed for a 9-year-old. "Because now Grandpa is going to see." The color drained from Maxwell's face. His family exchanged puzzled glances, but I caught it immediately, the flicker of fear that trembled beneath his rage. He barked, his voice cracking, "What are you talking about?" Emma tilted her head, her expression unnervingly analytical, like a scientist dissecting a specimen. "I've been recording you, Daddy. Everything, for weeks. And I sent it all to Grandpa this morning." The silence that followed was suffocating. Maxwell's family shifted in their seats, suddenly restless, suddenly uneasy. They knew something had shifted, something irreversible. Hours earlier, I had been in this same kitchen basting the turkey while my ribs throbbed with the ache of bruises from last week's lesson. I had smiled through the pain, careful to hide every wince. Maxwell's family was coming, and any sign of weakness would be ammunition for them. I remember Emma watching me from the counter, her homework spread out before her, but her eyes fixed on me. At just 9, she could read the signs of his temper better than I could. The set of his shoulders when he walked in, the way he cleared his throat before a tirade, the dangerous quiet before the storm. "Mom," she whispered, her pencil still. "Are you okay?" The question had pierced me deeper than any bruise. How many times had I lied to her? How many times had I whispered, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Daddy's just stressed." But she knew. She always knew. When Maxwell stormed down the stairs that afternoon barking about his missing shoes, Emma had defied him with a bravery that chilled me. She had told him simply, "Be nice to Mom." I'd seen the flash in his eyes then, the dangerous spark that meant trouble. I had hurried her away, but I couldn't erase the way she'd squeezed my hand as she passed, as though telling me silently that she was ready, that she was watching. By the time his family arrived, Maxwell had already donned his charming mask. He played the devoted husband, the successful provider, the gracious host. His family followed suit, attacking me in ways so subtle and polished they almost sounded like compliments. My decorations were rustic. My efforts at schooling had been a foolish attempt. His mother, with her syrupy voice, told the room Maxwell had married down. And through it all, Maxwell said nothing. He never did. I bore it all with a smile that cost me pieces of myself each time it slipped across my lips. But Emma, my little girl, sat at the table with her tablet in her lap, her dark eyes hardening with every cruel word, every dismissal, every laugh at my expense. She didn't eat. She didn't speak. She watched. She recorded. The breaking point had come like a crack in thin glass. His brother's smug pride over his wife's promotion. His mother's toast to strong, intelligent women that excluded me entirely. Maxwell's casual agreement, his raised glass held high as though I wasn't even in the room. I had excused myself to the kitchen to breathe, to fight back the tears that clawed at my throat. And from there, I had heard Emma's voice cut through the dining room like a blade. "Why do you all hate my mom?" The silence that followed had been deafening. She had listed every cruelty, every slight, every moment they made me small. She had defended me with the fierce, unyielding love of a child who knew the truth too well. Maxwell had silenced her with a roar, and I had rushed back in to protect her. But in the end, it hadn't been me who stood tallest that night. It had been Emma. And when Maxwell's hand struck me down in front of them all, it wasn't my words that shattered the room. It was hers. Because in that instant, my daughter held the truth, and the truth had more power than his fists ever would. Maxwell's family erupted in a chorus of voices, his mother scolding Emma for speaking out of turn, his brother muttering that kids these days didn't know their place, his sister sneering that I had turned my daughter against her father. But the louder they got, the quieter Maxwell became. His silence was more telling than their noise. His eyes darted to Emma, then to me, then back again, as though he were cornered and searching desperately for an exit. Emma didn't flinch. She stood straighter, her small shoulders squared, her chin lifted. "I sent the videos to Grandpa." She repeated, her voice calm and resolute. "He's going to see how you treat Mom, how all of you treat her." The room froze. Maxwell's father, an old stern man who had always doted on his son and dismissed me, wasn't here tonight, but his presence hung like a shadow. Everyone at the table knew what it meant for Emma's words to reach him. For all his faults, he was a man of influence, of reputation, and above all of control. Maxwell had spent his whole life trying to live up to him, trying to earn his approval. And now Emma had lit a fuse that threatened to burn all of Maxwell's carefully constructed lies to the ground. My husband lunged forward suddenly, snatching the tablet from Emma's hands. He fumbled at the screen, his fingers clumsy with rage, but she didn't even try to stop him. She just looked at him with that same steady stare, the kind that made even me shiver. "It's already too late," she said softly. "I emailed everything this morning." The tablet slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor. For the first time in years, I saw fear in Maxwell's eyes. Real fear. Not the kind that spurred his anger, not the kind that turned into violence, but the kind that comes when a man realizes his kingdom is about to crumble. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. But instead, what I felt was grief. Grief for the years I had wasted loving a man who saw me as less than human. Grief for the daughter who had been forced to grow up too fast to carry burdens a child should never carry. His mother broke the silence with a shrill laugh, forced and brittle. "You think some silly videos will change anything? You think anyone will believe the word of a child?" Emma's eyes flicked to me then, and I understood. I had a choice. I could stay silent as I always had, and let them tear her down the way they had torn me down. Or I could stand beside her shoulder to shoulder and finally speak the truth. "My daughter isn't lying," I said, my voice hoarse but steady. "And neither am I. I've been humiliated, belittled, and struck in this house for years. And all of you," I swept my gaze across the table at their smug, guilty faces, "you have encouraged it. You've laughed at it. You've called it strength. But strength isn't in cruelty. Strength is surviving it." Maxwell's face twisted red with rage. He stepped toward me, hand raised again, but this time I didn't shrink back. I didn't cower. Emma moved between us like a shield, her little arms spread wide. "Do it!" She dared him, her voice shaking but defiant. "Hit us both. Then Grandpa will know exactly who you are." The air seemed to crack around us. Maxwell froze, his arm trembling mid-air. His family watched in horrified silence. For a long, endless moment, it was as if the entire room was holding its breath. And then he lowered his hand, not out of mercy, not out of regret, but because he knew she was right. The night unraveled quickly after that. His family muttered excuses, suddenly eager to leave. His mother hissed at him in hushed tones, warning him of the disaster to come. His brother left without meeting my eyes. His sister slammed the door so hard the walls shook. When it was just the three of us, me, Maxwell, and Emma, the silence felt different. He stood by the window, gripping the curtain so tightly the fabric tore beneath his fingers. I sat on the couch, holding Emma against me, her small body trembling at last now that the danger had passed. I kissed the top of her head, whispering, "You were so brave." But inside I was shaking too, because bravery came with consequences, and I knew the storm had only just begun. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay awake with Emma's breath warm against my collarbone, the clock blinking a harsh green in the dark like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow. Maxwell paced the hallway until dawn. Floorboard pause, the rhythm of a man trying to outwalk the consequences that had found him. At some point, the pacing stopped. A door clicked. Water roared through pipes. When the shower shut off, the house fell into a silence so complete it hummed. My phone buzzed just after 7. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Arthur Hale. Maxwell's father. Emma stirred and opened one eye, reading my face like a barometer. "It's him," she whispered. I nodded. "I've got it," I answered in the quietest voice I own. "Hello?" His tone was frost over steel. "I received materials, a beat, from Emma." My throat tightened. "Then you know. I know enough to ask you to bring her to my office at 10. Another beat, the sound of someone turning a heavy page. "And bring the tablet." He hung up without waiting for agreement. Emma watched me with that too-old steadiness. "Do we have to go?" I brushed her hair back. "We don't have to do anything we don't want to." I meant it and didn't. There are choices you make for yourself, and there are choices you make for a child who shouldn't have to choose at all. But if we go together. And we don't go alone. I texted the only person in the Hale family who had ever looked at me like I was human, Aunt Lily, Arthur's sister. She replied immediately, "I'll meet you downstairs at 9:45. He won't bully you with me there." Maxwell was already dressed when Emma and I came down. Cufflinks, tie knotted too tight. The performance of control. He blocked the doorway, eyes bloodshot. "Where?" "To your father's," I said, stepping around him, feeling the heat of him like a furnace when I passed. He asked to see Emma. His jaw worked. "He'll protect me." I stopped. So did Emma. Maybe I said softly, but not from the truth. He flinched like I'd struck him. For a second the mask slipped and I saw the boy who had learned to fear his father before he learned to shave. I hated the part of me that still held the smallest grief for that boy. Compassion is a stubborn thing. It survives in the unkindest weather. Arthur's office sat like a throne room above the city, all glass and walnut and male lineage in heavy frames. He didn't rise when we entered. He never did. He just looked at Emma first, assessing. Then at me, searching for weakness. And then past us as Lily slipped in behind, closing the door, with the gentlest click that felt somehow like a barricade. "Sit," Arthur said. We didn't. He frowned, then lifted a hand. "Fine." To Emma. "Did you take these videos yourself?" Emma nodded. "Yes, sir, no tremor, no apology." "Why?" "Because my mom needed help," she said, simple as breath. No one listens when she says things. People listen when they see. The lines around his mouth deepened. He turned to me. "Is what I saw representative or curated?" My voice didn't shake. "Representative, I wish I could tell you it's the worst. It isn't." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You understand, Elizabeth. He always used my full name like an indictment, that if this becomes public, it diminishes us all. The family, the company, the legacy my father built." Lily moved then, sliding into the chair nearest Emma, her hand resting light as a leaf on my daughter's shoulder. "The legacy your father built doesn't include hitting women at the Thanksgiving table, Arthur." Something shadowed his face, a ghost I recognized. It was the first time I wondered what he'd learned at a table like this when he was a boy. He exhaled long and slow. "Where is Maxwell?" "Home," I said. "For now." Arthur tapped the desk twice, the way I'd watched Maxwell tap counters when he calculated the safest lie. "There are 2 paths," he said finally. "Containment or correction." Emma leaned forward, small hands in fists. "There's a third," she said. "Protection." He looked at her as if she'd spoken in a language he hadn't expected to understand. "Protection," he repeated. "For my mom," she said. "For me." Lily's voice softened but did not bend. "Arthur, we're not here to negotiate optics. We're here because your son's daughter recorded him assaulting his wife. Because that daughter was brave enough to send it to you. So here's what happens." She ticked the list off on her fingers like she was reciting a recipe. "Elizabeth and Emma move out today with a stipend that keeps them safe. The house is in her name by week's end. Maxwell begins anger intervention with someone we choose, not one of your golf friends. Emma's therapy is covered indefinitely, and until Maxwell demonstrates change, supervised contact only. If you refuse, we file police reports with the videos attached, and the board will learn why your heir apparent is unfit to lead." Arthur's eyes flashed. "You would blackmail me?" Lily smiled without warmth. "I would prioritize a child." Silence stretched thin as glass. Outside, the city glittered, unaware that a dynasty's hinge was groaning open. Arthur looked down at the tablet again. He pressed play on a clip I couldn't bear to watch my cheek. His hand the sound that still lived in my bones. His jaw clenched. When he looked up, his gaze had shifted a degree from defense toward decision. "Leave the device," he said. "You'll have what you asked for by Friday." Then to Emma, surprisingly soft. "Young lady, you have altered the course of a family more than any vote I've chaired. I hope for all our sakes that it's toward decency." Emma's chin lifted. "That depends on Dad." We left without ceremony. In the elevator, my knees buckled, and Lily caught me with a gentleness that undid me. Emma pressed her face into my side and finally, let herself cry, the hiccuping kind that shakes a small body to the core. I sank to my haunches and held her forehead to forehead. "You were brave," I whispered. "Braver than I have ever been." She hiccuped. "I was scared." "I know." I tucked hair behind her ears, seeing the child and the steel both. "Being brave doesn't mean you weren't. It means you did it anyway." By dusk, Lily had us in a furnished apartment across town, the sort of place designed for executives in transition, all neutral couches and 2 white plates. It felt like a hotel. It felt like a harbor. I cooked pasta on a pan that still had its price sticker on the underside. Emma ate 3 bites and fell asleep against my arm. I watched her chest rise and fall, counting each lift like prayer beads. My phone buzzed again near midnight. A message from an unknown number, but I knew the cadence. "You've humiliated me." Another, "Do you know what he'll do to me? Then come home. We can fix this. We'll be a family." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, until a 4th text came and sliced clean through the fog. "If you make me lose everything, I will take something from you." I took a screenshot and sent it to Lily, then to my email, then to a folder labeled for safety. I turned the phone off and slid it into the freezer. Cold kills battery, and for tonight I needed its silence more than its signal. In the quiet, a memory rose unbidden. Our wedding day. He'd cried at the altar. Everyone said it meant he loved me. No one told me it might mean he loved the story of himself he was writing, more than he would ever love the woman standing in front of him. I looked at Emma asleep on the sofa and felt a promise take shape in me, so strong it felt like bone. Whatever storm came next, lawyers, custody, gossip, the slow grinding machine of change, we would meet it with our eyes open. We would not live small. We would not live scared. Morning would bring papers and signatures and the rearranging of walls. Tonight brought something quieter and just as radical rest. I closed my eyes with my hand on Emma's back, and for the first time in years I slept. The morning light poured through thin curtains, harsh and unkind, as if it wanted to expose everything I had tried to bury in the night. Emma was still asleep on the sofa, curled beneath a throw blanket that smelled faintly of detergent not home. Her lips were parted, her lashes damp from the tears she had finally let fall. I watched her for a long while, memorizing the rise and fall of her chest, the proof of her existence, the proof of why I would not go back. Lily arrived just after 9, carrying a paper bag of pastries and 2 cups of coffee. She set them on the counter without ceremony, her sharp eyes sweeping the apartment. "He texted you, didn't he?" she asked. I nodded, sliding my phone across the counter. She didn't even flinch when she read the last message, the threat buried between apologies and blame. She simply took another sip of her coffee and said, "Good. This makes it easier." Easier, my voice cracked on the word. "For court," she replied. "For custody. For everything that's coming." The idea of court made my stomach knot, but I forced myself to hold her gaze. I had spent years shrinking, softening, keeping peace at any cost. That part of me was dying. In its place, something raw and new was learning to stand. Later that day, an envelope was delivered by courier, Arthur's seal embossed in red. Inside was a notarized agreement, the house transferred to my name, a monthly stipend wired to my account, therapy for Emma covered indefinitely. It was everything Lily had demanded, signed without flourish, but with a signature that carried the weight of a dynasty. Yet victory tasted strange, because I knew what was missing: Maxwell. His name appeared only in the clauses about supervised visitation and mandated intervention. He was being protected by the very man who had finally acknowledged my suffering. Justice but diluted, truth but managed. That evening, Emma stirred awake and asked, "When do we go home?" My throat tightened. "Sweetheart, this is home now." Her brows furrowed. "But Daddy?" I pulled her into my lap, feeling her warmth seep into my bones. Daddy hurt us, and we're not going back to hurt. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Will he come here?" I swallowed hard. Not unless we say yes, and I don't think we ever will. The days blurred into a rhythm of survival, meetings with lawyers, counseling sessions for Emma where she painted stormy skies and broken houses, nights when I lay awake listening for footsteps that never came. Maxwell tried to call from numbers I didn't recognize, left voicemails that swung between pleading and threatening. Each one I saved, each one I filed away in that growing folder of evidence labeled for safety. One night, weeks later, Emma crawled into bed beside me. "Mom," she whispered in the dark, "do you think Daddy ever really loved us?" Her question sliced deeper than any bruise. I held her tight, my tears wetting her hair. "I think he loved who he wanted to be. But love isn't supposed to hurt the way he hurt us. Real love makes you feel safe." She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "I'm glad I sent the videos." "So am I said, pressing my lips to her temple. "You saved us, Emma. You saved me." For the first time in years, I meant every word. The world outside went on as though nothing had changed. People bustled through streets, held hands in restaurants, clinked glasses in celebration. But inside me, a revolution had begun. The silence I once feared had become my shield. The truth I once hid had become my sword. And though I knew the fight wasn't over, I also knew one thing with unshakable certainty: Maxwell could no longer bury me in his shadow. I was stepping into my own light, carrying my daughter with me. The first court date arrived on a bleak Monday, rain streaking the courthouse windows like tears shed in advance. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Emma beside me with a sketchbook and colored pencils to distract her. Lily was behind us, a steady presence, her hand on my shoulder whenever my resolve wavered. Across the aisle sat Maxwell, immaculate in his tailored suit, hair slicked back, the picture of composure. But his eyes betrayed him, darting, restless, burning with a fury he could no longer disguise. The judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and a voice that brooked no nonsense, opened the proceedings. "We are here to determine custody, visitation, and protection measures in the matter of Maxwell and Elizabeth Hale." I forced myself to look straight ahead as the attorneys presented their cases. Maxwell's lawyer painted him as a devoted father, a man under immense stress who had momentarily lost his temper. He gestured to Maxwell's family seated behind him, their faces rehearsed in grief, each nodding solemnly like actors in a play. Then came my turn. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Perez, slid the tablet across to the judge. "With the court's permission, we will play Exhibit A." The room filled with the crack of Maxwell's hand against my cheek, the sound of Emma's voice rising in defiance, the chaos that followed. The silence after was deafening. The judge's jaw tightened, and for the first time since all this began, I felt the scales tip. Emma's testimony was brief, but powerful. She spoke clearly, her small voice trembling only once. "I recorded Daddy because I wanted people to believe Mommy. He always makes her cry and everyone laughs. I didn't want him to hurt her anymore." Maxwell tried to interrupt, but the judge's gavel struck like thunder. "You will remain silent, Mr. Hale, or I will hold you in contempt." By the time closing arguments finished, I could barely breathe. The judge called a recess. Emma curled into my side, exhausted. Maxwell glared at me across the aisle, lips moving with a promise only I could read. "This isn't over." And I believed him. When the judge returned, her decision was swift. Temporary full custody to me. Supervised visitation for Maxwell pending further review. Mandatory therapy for him. A restraining order effective immediately. The words washed over me like rain after a drought. Relief tangled with fear, joy twisted with sorrow. Because even as I won, I knew this was not the end. Maxwell would fight. Men like him always did. That night back at the apartment, Emma asked, "Does this mean we're safe now?" I hesitated. Safety felt like a fragile thing. Something that could shatter with one knock at the door, one misdialed number, one shadow too close behind us. But I looked into her hopeful eyes and chose the only truth I could give her. "We're safer than we were yesterday," I said softly, brushing her hair back. "And tomorrow we'll be safer still." She smiled, small and tired, and laid her head on my lap. I stroked her hair, staring out at the city lights beyond the glass. For the first time in years, the future didn't look like a dark corridor with no exit. It looked like a road, long, winding, uncertain, but ours. I whispered a vow into the quiet, more to myself than to her. No matter what storms come, Emma, we'll walk through them together, and we won't just survive, we'll live. Weeks turned into months, and with them came a rhythm of fragile normalcy. Emma and I settled into our apartment, its neutral walls slowly becoming a canvas for our lives. Her drawings taped to the fridge, a second-hand rug in the living room, the faint smell of lavender from the candles I lit at night when the silence grew too heavy. I learned how to breathe without flinching at every sound, how to wake without bracing for the weight of his voice in the morning. Maxwell remained a shadow, his presence reduced to court summonses, supervised visits, and the venomous letters he tried to pass through lawyers. The restraining order kept him physically away, but his memory lingered like smoke. There were nights I'd dream of his hand lifting again, only to jolt awake drenched in sweat, Emma's soft snores grounding me back in the present. The first supervised visit came on a Saturday afternoon at a sterile facility, all white walls and plastic chairs. Emma clung to my hand, her fingers clammy. "Do I have to?" she whispered. "Yes," I murmured, kneeling to her level. "But remember, you can walk away if you feel unsafe. You're in control this time." She nodded, her eyes too old for her years. We stepped into the visitation room where Maxwell sat waiting, flanked by a court-appointed monitor. His smile was stretched thin, desperate. "Pumpkin," he said, voice trembling. "I've missed you." Emma froze. For a moment I thought she might run, but then she straightened, clutching her little backpack like armor. "You hit Mommy," she said flatly. "You scared us. I don't miss that." The monitor's pen scratched across her notepad. Maxwell's face crumpled, rage and sorrow warring beneath the surface. "She turned you against me," he hissed, but the monitor cut him off sharply. "Mr. Hale, one more outburst and this visit is terminated." Emma walked back to me, slipping her hand into mine. "I'm done," she said. And that was that. Afterward, she was quiet in the car, staring out the window. Finally, she asked, "Do you think he'll ever stop being angry?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't know, sweetheart. Some people carry their anger like a weapon, but we don't have to carry it with them." Her small hand squeezed mine. "I don't want to." Neither did I. Spring arrived, softening the edges of winter's grief. Emma's laughter returned in bursts, bright and sudden, like wildflowers pushing through cracks in concrete. She made friends at school, invited them over, filled the apartment with noise and crayons and the sound of belonging. I watched her reclaim her childhood piece by piece, and in doing so, I began reclaiming myself. One evening after she had gone to bed, Lily and I sat on the balcony with mugs of tea. The city pulsed below, lights flickering like fireflies. "You did it," Lily said quietly. "You got out. You kept her safe." I stared into the steam of my cup, tears stinging. Sometimes I wonder if I waited too long, if I let her see too much. "She saw enough to know the truth," Lily said, "and she saw you survive it. That matters." Her words settled deep, a balm on wounds I hadn't realized were still open. I thought of Emma's bravery, of the way she had stood between me and her father with arms outstretched. I thought of my own trembling voice finally rising in defiance. We had faced the storm, and though it had scarred us, it had not destroyed us. One night, months later, Emma crawled into bed beside me. "Mom," she whispered, "are we happy now?" I looked at her, at the softness returning to her cheeks, the light rekindling in her eyes. I thought of the life we were building, fragile, but ours, stitched together with truth instead of silence. "Yes," I whispered back, pulling her close. "We're happy, and we're free." For the first time in years, I believed it. If this story touched you, if you felt the weight of every word and the strength it took to tell it, I invite you to support us by liking this video, sharing it with others who may need courage, and subscribing for more stories that reveal the resilience of the human heart. And please leave a comment. Tell me if you've ever faced a storm and found your way to freedom too. Your voice matters here.